What's up guys, my name is Mark Steiner, and today we are going to be reviewing and comparing the DJI Mic 2 to the DJI Mic Mini to the DJI Mic 3. Let's get right into it. Let's get the specs out of the way first because I want this video to be mostly surrounded around the audio quality that these devices offer so that you can make the most informed decision possible if you're thinking about purchasing one of these. Unless otherwise specified, everything you hear in this video is coming from the DJI Mic 3 with post-production EQ applied to it. The DJI Mic 2 comes in at 28 grams, with it being the heaviest and largest device on this list. The Mic Mini comes in at 10 grams, being the smallest and lightest on this list, and the DJI Mic 3 comes in at 16 grams with the magnet. All three of these products have noise cancelling. However, the DJI Mic 2 is the oldest version here. It only has one level of noise cancelling, whereas the Mic Mini has 2 levels of noise cancelling, and the DJI Mic 3 also has 2 levels of noise cancelling, with the DJI Mic 3 having the best noise cancelling of the bunch. Personally, I don't like using any kind of built-in noise cancelling on these microphones. I prefer to do all my noise cancelling in post, and I feel like doing it in post-production is just a better way to go because you get to dial it in exactly how you want. You can isolate your voice a little bit better, and of course a program like DaVinci Resolve on a fully fledged laptop computer, you're going to get better control than the built-in version on these microphones. The Mic 3 is the only one to feature the brand new voice tone presets, which are basically like built-in EQs to help enhance your voice type. Both the Mic 2 and 3 have internal 32-bit float recording, which is wonderful. The Mic 2 has 8 gigabytes of internal storage, whereas the Mic 3 has 32 gigabytes of internal storage. That is a lot of audio storage. The Mic 3 also has dual 32-bit float internal recording, and what that means is that you get one file that is completely uncompressed, completely untouched, raw, and the other, if you choose to add some of the other features such as noise cancelling or voice tone, you get that 32-bit float file as well with those things baked in, but you also get the raw, uncompressed, untouched version, so you can pick between the two if you want to do some post-processing. I think that is a really good feature for creatives because you get the best of both worlds. You can dial in your settings on the mic as you so wish and have the internal recording of the camera sound great, but then if you realize you want to do some more tweaking or you weren't the biggest fan of the settings that you had baked into the camera, now you can edit that with the uncompressed file, and I think that is wonderful. Let's talk battery life. The Mic 2 has a battery life of 6 hours, less if you're using the internal recording feature. The Mic Mini has the longest battery life at 11.5 hours, and the Mic 3 sits in the middle with 8 hours of battery life, less if you're using the internal recording. If you include the total battery time offered with the charging cases, the Mic 2 comes in at 18 hours, the Mic Mini comes in at 48 hours, the longest of the three by far, and the Mic 3 comes in at 28 hours. And when it comes to connections, the DJI Mic 3 is the only one to support more than what comes in the box. You can connect an additional 2 transmitters to this receiver, so if you wanted to do a 4-person setup, that is now possible. And if you had a crazy multicam setup, you could have multiple receivers receiving from those 4 transmitters. Another brand new feature that is exclusive to the DJI Mic 3 is timecode. Now you have built-in timecode, so when you're doing post-processing, you can just sync your audio seamlessly, and that is a very welcome addition. When it comes to receivers, there's not a huge difference between the DJI Mic 2 and the DJI Mic 3. If you've seen that receiver before, it's more or less the same, not a lot has changed. Both the Mic 2 and 3 receivers have the option to monitor audio through the receiver directly. The Mic 3 receiver has a locking connection, which is quite nice. All 3 of these receivers can connect to your Sony camera digitally via the MI shoe, which is quite nice. That is a separate attachment. However, there are 2 versions of this MI shoe interface. One works for the DJI Mic 2 and one works for the DJI Mic Mini and Mic 3. So know which one you're buying. The old DJI Mic 2 is the only one to have a built-in USB-C connector as well as a 3.5mm jack. So if you want to lav people up or if you want to plug directly into a laptop and just offload via the microphone itself, that is the one you're going to need because the other 2, the Mic Mini and the Mic 3, no longer have these ports. I've been asked this question a lot, and it was the #1 question on my mind as well. How is the DJI Mic 3 supposed to offload its internal recordings if there's no longer a USB-C port on the side of the microphone? This is how you do it. You have to put everything back into the charging case, plug the charging case into your computer, and then it will recognize the 2 microphones for you to be able to offload your recordings that way. And then of course on the Mic Mini, there's just no internal recording whatsoever. Both the Mic 2 and Mic Mini have the clips built in, and then you attach the magnet to the back of the clip, whereas the DJI Mic 3, the clip itself is magnetic, so you can rotate it any way, which is really helpful, so you can just put it on your subject in the way that makes the most sense based off the article of clothing they're wearing. But then if you don't want to have the clip attached, you can just remove it completely and attach the microphone to the back of that, which is really helpful. I think this is one of the better updates to come to the Mic 3 because I tend to use the magnet a lot more than the clip, and I always found it a bit annoying that I had to attach a magnet to the back of the clip, but now I get to pick between the two, and I think that's really fun. Another welcome change is that the Mic 3 case now is designed purposefully to be able to store everything in it completely closed. I know previously people were kind of able to finesse their way and kind of like really difficultly close the charging case to make sure that all the attachments fit in the charging case. You don't have to worry about that anymore. You can put every single accessory that comes in the box into the charging case and it works perfectly fine without having to shove it down. The receivers of the Mic 2 and Mic 3 both have the 1.1-inch OLED touchscreen, so you can change all the settings on the receiver itself, whereas the receiver of the DJI Mic Mini is completely bare bones. It's basically just to receive the audio and input it into the camera, and then you can adjust the volume on the receiver as well, and that is it. That's it for specs. Let's get into the thing that actually matters: audio quality. I have 3 mics attached to me right now, and we're gonna switch between the 3 of them. I'm gonna read a short monologue so you can compare the differences directly with each microphone. Here we go. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. And just for another test, I'm going to be hand-holding the mics near to my mouth so you can see what that scenario sounds like. This is what the Mic Mini sounds like when being handheld. This is what the Mic 2 sounds like being handheld close to my mouth. This is what the Mic 3 sounds like near my mouth being handheld. All right, so now we're doing the outdoor test. We're on a very busy street with a bunch of traffic. It's right before rush hour. It's a little windy as well, so we got the wind muffs on, but here we go. I'm gonna read the same script as before so you can compare the mics in each scenario and see what you think is best. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemies to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemies to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemies to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. All right, now we're gonna do the same test, but noise canceling is on for every single mic. Let's do this. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Could you hear a difference with the noise canceling? Let me know in the comment section down below. All right, we are no longer next to a loud, noisy roadside environment. We are in a bit of a more quiet environment. However, it is a very windy day right here by the coast. So let's see how the wind muffs are holding up. How do I sound? I'll do the reading for you now. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. And now here's that exact same passage, but with noise canceling turned on. It's gotten really windy. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Okay, after putting everything on the laptop, listening with headphones, doing all my tests, here are my final conclusions. If you're a current Mic 2 owner, you're not seeing a huge jump in performance in audio quality on the Mic 3. So if you're satisfied with the audio quality you've been getting, there's not a massive difference and you should just stick with the Mic 2. Now, if you own a Mic 2 and you're looking to upgrade because you appreciate the software features, the dual 32-bit float recording, the inclusion of timecode, the fact that you can now pair more than 2 mics to 1 receiver, better multicam stuff, the smaller form factor, the fact that the clip can rotate and is now detachable and you can just use the magnet, I think those things are a more compelling upgrade than the actual sound quality itself. Oh, and don't forget, you get 32 gigabytes of onboard storage versus the 8 of the Mic 2. So I guess that's pretty compelling too. But again, if you haven't really been running into issues with the Mic 2, then there's not a huge difference between them that you're gonna notice. If you need to lav someone or offload your files via the microphone itself, the Mic 2 is still the way to go because the Mic 3 does not have any of those ports on it. So you're not missing a lot there. I would look into the competition from Hollyland if you're interested in an upgrade in that way, but I digress. The Mic Mini is now the best bang for buck option for the vast majority of people, I would say. There's no internal recording and it's less feature rich than the other two, but for a lot of people, especially beginner creators who just want to plug a microphone into a camera or their phone and they're not doing any post-production, they're not doing anything, this is a really good option, really good budget option, really good bang for buck. You really can't go wrong with that. The Mic 2 now being on discount sits between the Mic Mini and the Mic 3. And as I said before, if you think you want the lav and the USB-C port, that is a good option as well. And for a lot of people, that form factor is still perfectly fine. But if you do want the best of the best and you have the budget for it, the Mic 3 does offer a compelling upgrade if you're coming from nothing. And even if you are coming from the Mic Mini or the Mic 2, there are enough compelling upgrades that if you are the suited person for that kind of thing, it makes sense. The dual 32-bit float internal recording with 32 gigabytes of storage is very appealing. The fact that it is almost as light as the Mic Mini is very nice. The audio quality is the best of the three of them, and I think that's most notable when you're holding the microphone close to your mouth. When you're putting it on your chest, they are relatively equal. I would still say that it's better than the other two, but it's not as big of a difference. I also think that the Mic 3 had the best noise canceling when it came to cutting out noise, but also retaining a more natural sounding voice. And that's something that the other two, I think, don't do very well at, which is why I prefer to do my voice isolation in post, because I can just dial it in a little bit better. These two sound quite robotic, whereas this one sounds a little bit more natural. Overall, it's a pretty good package. I think DJI's lineup is really good right now because you have the Mic Mini at the lowest end, you have the Mic 2 in the mid tier, and then you have the Mic 3 at the high end. And they all serve a purpose. They all fill this like good price point for their features, and you can really just pick whatever is in your budget and you can't really go wrong with that. If you want to check out even more audio samples of the Mic Mini and Mic 2, I have a whole video comparing those two, and if you want to learn how to EQ these microphones so they sound a lot better because they don't sound necessarily the best out of the box, I have a whole other video on that as well, so be sure to check that out. But I genuinely want to know, could you hear a difference between these microphones? And what are your takeaways after hearing all the different audio samples? Let me know in the comment section down below. My name is Mark Steiner, and I will see you next time.